Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Bava Kama Daf Kuf Yud Tes, which is the last daf in this Masechta. But we are going to begin on Kuf Yud Chesed Beis by the Mishnah in the middle of the Amud. Says Masnisin, Ein loichin min haroyim semer v'chalav ugedoyim. A person cannot purchase from shepherds because of the fear of shemagonvu. It could be stolen, whether we're dealing with wool or milk, or the animals themselves. V'lo mishemri peros, you can't buy from people who are watching fruit, eitzim uperos, the wood or fruit, because maybe they're stealing the fruit that they're watching. Avoloichin min hanashim klit semer, biyehuda uklit pishtim megol. You are allowed to purchase wool from women in Yehuda or Pishtan in the Golil, which is considered to be the malacha of those women in those areas, and that they actually are engaged in selling them. The husbands are all aware of this. Okay. Va'agolim b'sharon, and for that matter, says Rashi, haroyim b'sharoin b'rechava. So when it comes to shepherds, they sell them in Sharon, in the street. They sell them openly, le'ein koil, to basically everyone. And the fact that Rashi says that it's done before Hesia, that's pretty clear that they would not have stolen them. Okay, that's one shot in Rashi. There's a lashon acher, but let's go weiter. V'kol she'amru lahatmin aser. However, if they tell you, hide this, don't tell anyone about it, obviously that's an indicator that maybe it's stolen. V'loichin beitz v'tarnagol mikol makoim. However, when it comes to eggs and chicken, those you're allowed to purchase anywhere. It's not a problem. We're not concerned those are stolen items. Says the Gemara. Tanaban, ein leichem min harayim lo izim, lo gedim, lo gizin, lo tulushim shel tzemer. So these are all different things that you cannot purchase from a shepherd, whether dealing with goats or sheep, whether they're wool which is shorn, v'lo tlushim shel tzemer, not detached wool, of aleichem mehem tfurin. However, you could buy sewn clothes, mipnei shehein shelahen, because it's considered to be theirs. Says Rashi, Di'i nami ganvu kinyon b'shinoi. Even if they did steal it, they did a shinoi mais on it. V'leichem mehen chalav gvina b'midbar v'lo b'yishuv. And you can purchase milk and cheese in the wilderness, as Rashi Shein derech baal leilech sham, because people generally will not go there, but not in the yishuv. Derech lahavi lebeis baal habayis. So we make that distinction. V'loichin mehen dal v'heit soin. You could buy 4 or 5 sheep, but dal v'heit gizin, of a lo shtei soin v'lo shtei gizin, not 2. We should do 4 or 5, but not 2. Okay, how about 3? Okay. Yehuda Omer, it depends. Baisois loich mehen, midbarios ein loich mehen. It depends what type of animals we're dealing with. If we're dealing with baisois, says Rashi Sharbal Habayis Yodim in Yanam, he knows about these animals because they're domesticated, so therefore you can buy them. Because obviously if it was stolen, the Baal Bais would have known. However, animals which are more out in the open, which are not necessarily as watched, I think more in Bay at the very end of the Masechta talks about exactly what this means. Ein moichem mehen, again, the idea is because he may not realize. Kol shadev, the general rule is kol shaharoyim moicher, something which the shepherd sells, ubal habayis margishlo, and the Baal Bayis can figure out if it's missing, loichem mehen, because he would be able to figure out that it was stolen from his shepherd, and therefore that situation you'd be able to buy from them because obviously he would have been caught on it. However, ein margishmo, ein loichem mehen. If there's no way that the person could, as Rashi says, maven, figure it out, then not. So Omer Mar, loichem mehen dal v'heit sayin dal v'hei gizin. 4 and 5 is okay. Now hashtei shlomer arba zavninan chamishim boy. If 4 is allowed, then 5 certainly is allowed, because the more that you're buying, the more there's margish, there's more of an obvious knowledge that was stolen, because if you're missing a lot, so you'll figure out that a lot is missing. So if you can Even 4, then 5 for sure. So Rav Chisda Arba Mitech Chamisha. This is actually very similar to Gemara in Shabbos. 4 Arba Mitech Chamisha. So Rashi says, Imo hayulo be'eder el chamesh sayin. Let's say there's only 5 sheep. U'moichem mehen arbon. He sells 4. Mutulikach dekuli hayulo ganev midvar muet. You're not going to steal 4 from a flock of only 5, because then the Baal Bayis will obviously figure it out. The Yigad Yamri Yom Rav Chisda Arba me'eder katan, 4 from a small place. The chamesh me'eder gadol, 5 from a big one. Haguf akash. We have a stira. Amr dal v'hei, Tzayin dal v'hei gizin, had 4 and 5. Dal v'hei in avol shol shlo. 3 seems to be too small. Ema seifa avol loy shtei tzayin, not 2, which is mashal hasholish zamninan. So what's the deal with 3? Hakasha. Ha beriyasa, ha b'chishasa. One is if they're healthy animals. One is if they're weak, says Rashi. If they're healthy, briyais, ein bal habayis tamid alehen umargish b'sholish. He's constantly looking at his healthy animals because they're more valuable, and therefore he'll notice that there's 3 missing. Chushos, if they're weak, ein chashuva slow, they're not so important. Vein ein olehem, says Rashi. Lefikach ein margish, he's not going to notice. Kalaymar ein yodeya kishamachim zeh. You won't know that they were sold. Question number 5. Ein loichin min orayin, 4 and 5. Elu tsoin loichin afil shtayim l'chad man de'omer. You can even you can even do 2. Ve'el loichin shol shekol yalma. So he says like this: Baisois loichin afil shtayim. When it comes to baisois, even 2, because they are around. That's what he says. Baisois loichin mehen. Rabbi Huda Omer baisois loichin mehen. So even if there's only 2, you'd be able to sell them because they're so chashiv and they're domesticated. Tzayin briyos, animals which are healthy, kivan de'ein bal bayis tamid alehem afil shalish. This is constantly looking at them, even 3. Rabbi Huda Omer baisos loichin mehen midbaris ein loichin mehen kul. Iboyhu Rabbi Huda reisha koil chomro seifa u'dama seifa koil kul. So is he going lenient or strict? A reisha koil chomra, is he going strict like this? Diamri said like this: loichin mehen arba v'chamishat tzayin. You can buy 4 or 5. Hani mili baisois. Maybe it's only because they're domesticated. Of a midbarios, if they're out in the wilderness, in which again they're still owned, but they're harder for people to know, so they're not margish, than a fil arba v'chamish shalo. Maybe you can't sell 4 or 5. Odilma, that's what he's saying, that he's going strict, that in the midbarios you can't sell even 4, you can't buy even 4 or 5. Odilma sefikoi l'kul di amar avol loy shtei tzayin v'loy shtei gizin. You can't purchase 2. Hani mili midbarios, only if they're midbarios avol baiso shtayim nami loichin. Maybe he's lenient with 2. Tashma, and this is really question 5 over here. Avol baiso shtayim nami loichin. So Tashma desan Rabbi Huda Omer loichin baisos mehen ve'in loichin mehen midbarios. So you can purchase from them these animals that are baisos, not midbarios. Avol makam loichin mehen arba v'chamishat tzayin. However, you could always do 4 and 5 no matter what. Now, what can we derive from here as we continue to cook your tests on an olive? Mid Aymar, the Chol Makoim, since he said that you can buy 4 and 5 in all places, Shema Mina, Sefer Koil Kula Shema Mina, period. Shema Mina. There should be 2 dots there. Says Rashi, Alma Hai de Kamaflig, Ben Baisos Midbarios, Estate Sain Paul Kula. So we see actually he is Mako there. Someone who is guarding fruit, you can't just buy their fruit because they probably stole it. Rav Zavin Shabishta Me Arisa. So Rav is involved in purchasing chavilis muros, bundles of grapevines from a sharecropper. How could you purchase this? This is a kash in Rav, how could he have done this? Midi. This is only time that you can't do this is only if the sharecropper has no connection to the land. However, if this is a type of sharecropper who does have some ownership or connection to the land, we could assume that maybe it's actually coming from him. Tanarban. Sharme Paris Leichmehen Kishehen Yoshvin Umoichrin Vasalin Lifnehem Vitortine Lifnehem. So when it comes to Sherman Paris, you can buy from them while they're sitting and selling them, and there's baskets in front of them, and Rashi says Moznaim Gedolim, and they have scales in front of them. So it's pretty obvious that they're engaged in normal mechira, and it's done before Hesya. They're not doing it in a hidden way, so they're not afraid if it was stolen, they probably wouldn't do it this way. So it's an indicator that it probably isn't stolen. V'kulin she'amru hatmin aser. And then we also said, anytime that it is, they say, I'm hide it, then it's aser to buy. Loichin mehen mi pesach hagina, you can purchase from them from the opening of the entrance of the gate, of the garden, of a lo me'achori hagina, but not in the back. Because in the back, it looks like he's doing it in a hidden way. Itmar. Gazlan min amasai moto liknos. If you know someone's a thief, and maybe he's going to try to stop being a thief, when are you able to buy from him? If the majority of his stuff is his, so then we can assume, that it's fine. Even if the minority is his, we can still assume that he's selling things which are his. So Rabbi Yehuda paskined to Ada, that's in Shem Ha'ish, it's the name of a person. Dayala Kedivrei, Dayala, says Rashi, who is a Shamish Durabanan, Kedivrei Ha'omer Afil Miyat Shalai. The paskin that even if the smallest amount is his, is enough you can purchase from the Gazlan. Fine. Next case. Maman Masur. Let's say you have money of an informer. So Rav Huna, Rav Yehuda, Chada Omer Mutul Abdoi Biyad. You can mamish destroy it even with your hands. Chada Omer Asal Abdoi Biyad. Madim Mutul Abdoi Biyad, which we saw this before, 2 blot ago. Leihe Mamoinu Chamer Megufo. Because as he quotes the Gemara Avodah Zarah, the Mutul Abid Gufo Biyadayim. This person is such a rasha, this informer, that you can even harm him with your own hands. Diktani Haminim Hamasaidais Maridinais Labor V'Lamalon. You're Maridin V'Lamalon. You can put him into a pit and you don't lift him up. Masor, for some reason now Rashi's, it's out of order, I think. Malshin is an informer. Hamoiser Maman Chaveru La'anosim. And he basically, this is what we talked about a couple of blot ago, he gets people to lose their money and he informs on them. Why? Mishum Dehavili Zaramalia Ksiv Yochid Rasha with Sadik Yilbosh. There's also a similar Gemara like this regarding Hashavas Aveda. So even though he may be a Rasha, but we don't want to lose his items beyond, because if when he dies, maybe his children will be tzaddikim and they'll be able to inherit it. So we don't want to just destroy it. Rav Chisda Havi Leahu Arisa, he had a shepherd, the Havi Takil V'yoyev. Takil v'shakil, says Rashi. So Takil v'yoyev, he would go and give to Rav Chisda. Takil v'shakil, then he would go and take for himself. Medakdek b'chaluka, and he was very careful in how he divided everything up. V'enu mavater v'chelka klum, he wasn't giving any extras. Lashon acher mechsa hayanoitel v'derech shar harisin litel shlish. He would give a half, and normally shepherds take a third. Salkikra Nafshe, they read a pasuk on him. Rav Chisda read V'tzafoin L'tzadik Chel Chayte. So basically, he was saying that Rav Chisda was the tzaddik and the Oris was the Chayte. He was the sinner because he took more than he should have. Kima Tikvas Chanev Ki Yivtza. What is the proper manner or the hope of one engaged in trickery and flattery? Ki Eishel Elokan Nasho. Before Hashem will take away his soul. Okay. Says Rashi, Mashlich HaKadosh Baruch Hu Nishmasai. Take away his neshama, Um'abi Menu Neshama Achas. Rav Huna Rav Chisda, Chad Omer Nasho de Nigzel. What does it mean? Whose soul was taken away? The Nigzel. Because when you steal from someone, Imam feels like you're stealing from You're ripping his heart out. It's referring to the punishment of the Gazlan. It's like you actually took the person's nefesh. The Rambam says, when it comes to stealing by Gazlan, it doesn't have the lashon of mamoin, but rather the lashon of that you stole from the person. So we see clearly over here that it's like you're taking his nefesh. So it's not just money, but your mom is taking away a part of him. Al tigzol dal, don't steal from the poor, kidal, because he's poor. Val tedake ani bashar, do not oppress the poor person in the gate. Hashem yorev ribam, Hashem will quarrel. The kaves koivehem, says Rashi, nofesh, goizel nefesh goizlehem. That basically he'll punish the Gazlanim. The idach nami hoksev nefesh bal yikach. It sounds like the element of being taken away of kieshal elokan nafsho is on the nigzel. So my bal of dahashta. It's referring to the new owner, because when the Gazlan is takes it, he's kind it. So now he's like the new owner. So we're talking about him. The idach nami hoksev kaves koivehem nafesh, which is mashma. It's referring to the Gazlan. So matam karmer matam v'kaves koivehem mishum de kavoy nafesh. So it's referring that because he was kavei nafesh of the nigzel. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, kol geizel schavero shemarpruta ki'il neitel nishmasu mimenu. Interesting. Even if you steal some money, it's ki'il. It's almost like it feels like you're taking away his nefesh. Shnemer ki'arachos kol b'itzeya botzes nefesh bal of yikach. You're taking away his nefesh. And another pasuk says similar, v'achal ketzircha, that you eat that which you have harvested, v'lachmecha, and your bread, banech v'nosecha, your sons, yachul banecha, you'll eat your children. V'omer mechamas ben Yehuda, from the stealing, which is referring to with payment, asher shavchu dam naki b'artzam, that you spilled in the innocent blood. V'omer, another pasuk, el Shaul, the el beis hadamim, al asher hemes as hagivoinim, that he killed the givoinim. So what exactly is all this? So first of all, Rashi says, what's this case of hemes givoinim? So the Gemara is going to explain shehemes kohani noiv, that when it came to the city of Noiv, shayim aspikin mayim umazon legivoinim, they provided food and water to the givoinim. Shegivoinim hayim shamshim lemizbeach, like the eitzim shavimayim. Ma'avakasav kil hemis hagivoinim. So when Doeg Hayadoimi killed the city of Noiv Ir HaKohanim because he felt that they were helping David, so not only did he kill them, but it's like he also hurt everyone else because they were supporting and helping the Gevoinim. So since the Gevoinim didn't have food, so it's ki'il, like you took away their soul. The question is, my Yomi, why need all these psukim? You harmed the person, but not his kids. You even harmed his kids. It's only if you didn't pay. Maybe it's not so bad if you paid him by force. So that pasuk is referring to that you did pay, but by force. That you did it with your hands. Of a grumelo, something which is indirect, maybe not. Tashema el shoyel ve'el beis hadomim al asher hemes as hagevoinim, that he killed the gevoinim. V'chi hechem etzinu shahar es shol as hagevoinim. But where do we find that Shol and Doeg Hadoimi, that he killed the gevoinim? He killed Nov. El mitayich shaharag Nov, since he killed Nov, Ir HaKohanim shoyim aspikin lehem mayim amazayin, and they provided food and water for them. And now that they're not around to help them, Malakasav Kil Hargan, it's Kil like they actually killed them too. Avoichim and Hanashim, Tanabanam. Loichim and Hanashim, you can purchase from women, from wives, Kleit Semer Yehuda, wool garments in Yehuda, Klei Pishim Begol, Lo Yenus Shmanim Sulasais. wine, oil, and flour. Rashi says, Shedercha ish l'moichon. It's the way a man typically is one who sells it. Bein oises ishto shliach l'kach. He doesn't have his wife do it. B'shema genavto mibaloi. So there's a chance that she stole it. V'lomin ha'avadim, not from slaves, women and tanaikas, and also not from kids. Abashol Aimer, Mocheres Isha Ba'arba V'chamisha dinner. You can sell up to 4 and 5 dinner. Kedelasos Kipalo Rosha. In order that there should be a head covering for her head. And that much a Baal is not going to be makbid. V'kulon she'amru lahatmin aser. As the Mishnah said, if he says, I don't want you to tell anyone, don't tell anyone, hide it, so that it's aser, because it's most likely stolen. Gaboy tzedakah. When it comes to the gaboy tzedakah, who collect money, sometimes incorrectly, you can take from them a small amount of a low davar maruba, but not a large amount. But dadin, says Rashi, the Bali Beis Abad, people who are in the olive press, says Rashi, loichin min nesheim zeisim. They would take from women olives, v'shemen b'midah, and oil. Kolomer derech mechira b'far hesed. This is done in the public. V'derech meruba, de'en yochei lignaiv kol zos. It's not typical this would have been stolen. V'lasas b'sina, of a lo b'muet, de'genav toiv yochel lasas b'sina v'lo yargish ba'alo. So that's the reason why when it comes to an olive press, loichin mehen zeisim b'midah, it could be an exact measure. V'shem b'mida of a low zeisim b'muad v'shem b'muad, not a small amount because that could have been stolen, but a large amount for sure you could. You can purchase from women olives b'moyed during the holiday season. B'golil elyon shepa'amim adam boish limchar al pesach beiso, because sometimes persons embarrassed to sell it by their own house. The nice little ishto, he gives it to his wife. Moicheres, and she sells it. So therefore, it's not that the husband doesn't know about it; he knew about it. Ravina ikla be'mechoza. So he went to, who was Ravina, who happened to be a gabbai tzedakah. He went to mechuza. Asan nashi debei mechuza. So these women of mechuza came. Ramakamei kavle v'shirei, and they gave him shashar sahav, these golden chains and these bracelets, and kibel minayu, he accepted them. Rabbi Rabba toisval ravina v'osanya gabi tzedakah mekam nehen davar muad of aloy davar maruba. A gabi tzedakah should not collect from women a lot of money, but only a small amount. So how is he allowed to do this? When it comes to these women, even though it looks like it's such a tremendous amount of money that they're giving, but that's only relative to one's wealth. Because the Bnei Mechuza, Rashi says, Ashirim Haim, were so rich, so therefore it was actually to them, like it was an insignificant amount of money. TA 17. Ha'im mutter, are you allowed to purchase Misharmir Paris Umarisin Eitzum Peros? So, beferish from our Mishnah, when it comes to a shomer paris, it says beferish v'lo mishomer paris eitzim paris. So that's very clear that is not allowed. TA 17. However, as we saw on the top of Kufya Testament Aleph, that we found that by Rav Zovan Shabishtim Arisa. So this actually was allowed. TA 17. That he allowed this to be done, he said, because when it comes to an oris, the isle bigave ema benashi kozavin. So he has more of a connection to the land as opposed to a shomer. He's just instructed to watch the field, so the din is not the same. Question TB 18. TB18, Mehemas Savaras Hamachloikis Immortal Abid Mimenu Shel Meiser Biadayim. So are you allowed to take from a Meiser his money, Mamun Masur? So this is TB18. So he said there's a machlokus. One is it's mutter because lo yehi mamoinu chamer megufay. So if you're allowed to actually harm him physically, then certainly, as the Gemara, as we said in Avodah Zarah, says that it's maridin oisel labor v'lomalin. However, possibly you're not allowed to, because havile zari malia. What if they end up having beautiful children? Let's see what I wrote. Ulai pater shloi gar maman megufa sheishtin yarid labor. O ulai lo mipnei sheish shashu haya banim malu tzadikim behem yorshim es hamamin shel aviv. Okay, not bad. Okay. Okay, that's going to be the end of those questions for this Masechta. But we're not done yet. Let's see the last mission of this Masechta. Says the Mas Nisan. Moichin shahakoivis, when it comes to the pieces, now, this is a lot of times, as we're going to see, at least in the Seif of this Mishnah, you would actually provide the materials to the craftsman, and they would make something out of it. So moichin shakoivis, when it comes to the pieces of wool of the launderer, moitzi hari elu shelo, that stuff that came out, says Rashi, mebeged semer davar muit alidei shtifa, while they were cleaning it, a small amount came out. Then balbayis makbid, he doesn't care about that, so it's like, yeah, the launderer can keep that. And v'hasayrik, or v'shahasayrik, moitzi hari elu shel balbayis. When it comes to those who are combing the wool already, that goes to the balbayis. I guess for that, we say that the balbayis is makbid. It says Rashi, shedavar chashavu v'loy machel. He will not be moichel on that. Okay. Kaivis v'naitel gimel chutin. So you have a launderer and he removes 3 threads. The hin shelo, he gets to keep it. However, yes, mikain, if it's more than 3 threads, har il shel balbayis, that's already a lot, and therefore he has to give it back to the balbayis. However, im hayashachar, if they're black threads, alidi halavan, on a white garment, naitel sakol, can take the whole thing, says Rashi. Sha'ar go bebeged lavan rashai litol hakol, lafi shahashachar miganes alavan. Having black in a beautiful white garment is a ganai, and therefore you remove the whole thing. Vein shalo, and you get to keep it. Hachayit, someone who's involved in sewing, shishir es a chut, and he let his leftover thread kadei litforbo, enough to sew, that much he can keep. Umatlis shehi gimel al gimel, if you have a patch, which is gimel al gimel, Rashi says etzbaos, 3 by 3 fingers, so hari'elu shel bahabayas, that already is significant enough that it has to go back to the balabayas. And this is the materials that the balabayas gave, and then he made some final product, and he has some leftovers. Mashe hecharash maitzi, when it comes to a carpenter, whatever the wood is left over, so if it was b'matzah of a plain, hari'elu shelo gets to keep it. However, of a kashil, if you used some type of an axe, which Rashi says shipoyin gasin, he causes them to have big pieces of wood. Shel balbayis, the balbayis gets those big pieces back. Okay. V'im haya oisa eitzel balbayis, if you did a balbayis, af hanesarim shel balbayis. Also the nesarim and the saros, everything goes to the balbayis. Says Rashi, if you'll dak, even if it's very small, v'reisha b'kabel and shekibel livnei sabayis b'damim ktsuvim. You paid him a certain amount of money to do a task. Says the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan. Leichin meichin et kaivis. So you can purchase, get and purchase pieces of wool from a launderer, because it's his. Hakaivis naitel shnei chutin el yoinim. The launderer can take 2 top threads, and they belong to him. As we continue to the very last Almud in this Masechta, Kuf Yud Tes Amud Beis. V'lo yatel bo yois mishloisha, but he should not take more than 3 chayvin, 3 stitches. Says Rashi, derech hasorkin lase sulul ol shel tavi. It's the way to have these loops, b'machat l'arko shel beged, in the with a needle to the length of the garment. V'yisor kabeged l'shyai el arvo. It shouldn't do the shesi, but erev, the warp versus the woof, the length versus the width. Umashvehu arko, and you should stretch it out to the length of a little rachbo, but not to the width. The imbal shvaso ad tefach rishoi, and if you do stretch it out up until a tefach, that's allowed. Omar shtei chutin, 2 strings. Ibanan tanan sholosh, I heard it's 3. Lokasha habalimi ha bekatine. So it depends. If it could be gasin, thicker strings, and that's only up to 2. However, if they're thinner than 3. Vo yisroi kabeged l'shnoi el arbo. So when it comes to this garment, you have to make sure that you are not combing it shasi, but rather arev. I thought it was the other way around. Lokasha habaglima ha bitsarbo. It depends on what you're combing. If you're talking about a talis, which is used all the time, when you comb it, so it says it's shasi, it's easy for it to get ruined, and therefore you should do it the other way. But sarbaloi, which is a special nice garment, which is a lot nicer, so then you should comb it shesi, because it's not used that much anyway, even though like shesi is a nicer way of combing it in that direction. Okay, and you shouldn't do more than 3 stitches. Boy Rabbi Yirmiyah, amatavi v'asuye chad or dilma amatavi v'asuye trei teku. When is it the in and out is considered to be one action, or is in one and then out is another action? So what does it mean by 3 teku? Umashveu arkav rachbo, you should do the length and not the width. I will sign you if I thought it was the other way around. Lokasha abaglima, one is with a cloak, which is used all the time. Ha behem yuni, and the other one is with a belt. Okay, so again, depending on the garment, will depend on which is the right way of doing this. As Rashi, hem yoina enu nira el shtei rasheha hatuliyim lakach mishav rachba beis rashet tuliyim. Tanoban ein loichem in a sayrek. You should not take from the comer moichin these different pieces because they're not yours. However, if it's a place where they custom that the comer can do it, you can take. If you have, let's say, a pillow which is filled with all these feathers, that's okay. The kesis muchin, a pillow or blanket that's filled with feathers, my taima kini b'shinoi, because in that situation there was definitely a shinoi which was done by stuffing a pillowcase with feathers or a blanket with feathers. And therefore, he's kind it anyway. Tanaban ein loichin mi gardi. You can't take from a weaver vo irin vo nirin vo punkulin. Rashi has explains what these different things are for curtains. Vo shire pekiyos of loichin beged manumar. What's beged manumar? Kolamer filu manumar b'tzvayim harbi. Manumar is like a leopard which has spots. Has a lot of colors. V'afapi shurgol ledavar shiganai hatsemer min habegadim she'arag loich mehen de kinyan b'shinoi. So this is allowed because you, by doing this in this way, you did a shinoi. Erev shesi tavi v'arig, doing the warp and the woof, you spun it woven. Amri hashta tavoi shakli arig mibo. Amri, we said hashta tavoi shakli. You could take it if it was woven arig miboy. So my arig tiche. When we say arig, it's tiche. Rashi says do tavin koid mochen. It was not spun before. There is no spinning for this beged. Only it's woven right away. Tanoban ein leichin min hatzava. You cannot take from the dyer. Lo osos lo dugmois. So dugmois is like the samples. Lo telushim shel tzemer, not detached wool of loich mehen beged savua. You can take a dyed garment, and Rashi says the beged shalim, a full complete garment, lo ganav, is not stolen. V'inami gunvud kind of a shinoi, even if it was, but there was a kinyan shinoi which we saw in Daf Kuf about. Tavi begadim. If let's say you spun garments, so hashatavi shakal begadim boy, so my begadim namti. So again, We're talking about a situation where there's no spinning for this beged, only it was woven right away. Talk about hanais and oirais l'abdan. If you give hides to a tanner, hakitsunin, the pieces left, vatalushim, and that which is detached, hariyu shel balabayas, you still want them back. Va'oila u'mishatev b'mayim hariyu shelo. However, anything which was in water, so then you're not going to want it anymore, therefore he can keep it. Says Rashi, the davar muad, who it's insignificant, b'afki mafkele, the person was probably mafkred. Im hayashachor, if there was black strings with a white garment, he can keep it. Hu, Amar Yehuda, katzra shemei, v'katzra shakole. So he says like this, hakoyves nikra katzri. The launderer is called a katzri, which is the language of an Aramean, because he could be makatzrim in a beged, like he cuts the garment. So Amar Yehuda hakol oilin min techeles the Yitzchak bri kapit alayhu. Okay, and he was makbid from regarding taking it. Hachayit shishir min esachot chulu the kamulit farce. How much was it sewn? Amar Basi mul machat, the size of a needle. Chutz machat, excluding the needle. Iboilhu mul machat v'chutz machat kamoli machat. Is it considered to be the size of another needle? Odim mamoli machat v'chutz machat mashu, even a small amount. Tashma, this tiny hachayit shishir esachot. If you have a sewer that there's strings missing remaining, pachais mechdei lit for bo. Let's say it's less than the amount to sew with it. Umatla shehi pachusa mishol shal shosher. This patch, which is less than 3 by 3 etzbos, is manchal balbayis mak minalehin hariyah shal balbayis. If the balbayis cares, then you have to give it to him back. In a balbayis mak minalehin hariyah shalo. Otherwise, you get to keep it. Now, which is again a longer string. So pachs mikan chazal sichta. If it's a little bit smaller, it at least has some utility, right? You can still use it for something. Oh yeah, so what's it fit for? So otherwise it wouldn't have any utility to be asked the question whether the person would care to keep it, etc. Okay, fine. Let's see the next piece. Masha hacharash hu, minhu masha hacharash moitzi. Whatever the carpenter cuts out, b'matzid with a plane, b'nifsak b'mgeira, or with a saw, hareu shel bal habayis. It says that the bal habayis keeps it. V'hayoytz mitachas makdeach, mitachas rehitni, with these pincer removers, but nigra b'mgeira hareu shelo. So how can you tell me that when it's b'matzid, we see that he keeps it? We see clearly it goes to the bal habayis. So Marava. Bi'asur the Tana didan ikatarti chatzine or ravasi kari la kashel. So our Tana, so there were two different types of saws. One which was a larger saw, and it was called a kashel. Uzitrasi kari le matzad. The smaller saw was called a matzad. Bi'asur the Tana bra chad hudika v'kari le matzad. And there was only one saw, and it was called a matzad. So matzad in his city was a small saw, and there's a difference between a small and a big saw. And the Tana of the Brisa, there's only one type of saw. Okay, so let's look at, let's finish the Gemara. So then the Mishnah concluded that if, let's say, it was im hoy oisa eitzel, how do we translate that? Im hoy oisa eitzel bal bayis, often the serm shol bal bayis. Oh, so if it was by the bal bayis, then everything goes to the bal bayis. Okay, Tanabanim, misat te'avanim, chiseling stones. Ein behem yishum gezel. There's no din stealing. Mifaske ilanois, one who prunes trees. Mifaske gafanim, or grapevines. Minakfe hige, or menachshe zerayim, someone who is harvesting or pruning these trees, v'oidre yerakos, are hoeing through vegetables, mizmaj balbais makmin alehen yesh me'im mishum gezel. If the balbais is makmin, it's stealing. In balbais makmin alehen hari elu shalos. And Rabbi Yehuda koshes v'chozes when it comes to these like shachas, which is the beginning growths, which are only fit for animal consumption, in mihim mishum gezel. However, ba'asur the kapti yesh mishum gezel. And Ravina umas machasi asur the kaptihu. In that city, which is a place where there were animals and they constantly needed to use shachas in order to feed their animals, so that's a place in which they were in fact makman. Okay, let's look at question 6. Be'ez oifen motul lakachas moichin afil mahasayrik b'makam she nahagu she'enim shaloi umadua. Why would we say that we would allow the comber to potentially be able to purchase these things? So it's a karvik keses moli muchin leichim imenu kivan b'shinoi kane. So if you had these feathers and the like that were shoved into a pillow or a blanket, so therefore, even if it was stealing, but nonetheless it's considered to be a kinyan, because it was a shinoi maisa, and therefore that's the reason why you'd be able to purchase from him. Because even if it was stolen, the ganav was now koined. Hanulach geisel basra uslikol masechtas bava kama. We've now finished this masechta, and in tomorrow's daf we will begin the next masechta bava metzia. Ad kan.